Hey everybody, this is Matt, and welcome back to the Off-Farm Income Podcast. Thank you so much for being here for another one of our rural crime bonus episodes. Really appreciate you joining us. Well, hey, I am getting great feedback on these episodes. All of you who have reached out, thank you so much for doing that. That is great, and this is a lot of fun for me to do, so I love to hear that you are enjoying it as well, so that is great. So, hey, we are going to kick it off today without going into a tip of the week. Now, I'm going to do that next, but as I popped on my computer and I was sitting down to record this episode, I saw a story that caught my eye out of NBC News in Detroit. A Detroit firefighter veteran found dead after diving into the river to save 3 young girls. And, man, it is a sad story. It's a national news story, so you guys can find it if you want to. But I wanted to profile this hero right here. His name is Sergeant, I hope I'm saying it correctly, Sivad Johnson of the city's fire department. It says here both his father and his grandfather his father and his brother had also served as firefighters in Detroit. 48 years old, jumped into the river to save 3 girls from drowning. A bunch of other people jumped in as well. And his 10-year-old daughter reported him missing, said he never came back out of the river, and then they found his body later. And, it makes me think, when September 11th happened, and, of course, throughout my career in law enforcement and teaching criminal justice and taking classes and going through trainings and looking at videos, watching videos, and, of course, with September 11th being right in the heart of my law enforcement career, thinking about what those firefighters, what those paramedics, and what those police officers did on that day going into those towers. And I've always wondered, because I quite honestly have never been in that situation. I've always wondered, would I have stepped up? Would I have been up to the challenge had I been, a New York Police Department or a Port Authority police officer on that day? And my job was to go into those towers and to bring people out. Would I have stepped up? Would I have froze? Because you can sit here and you can say that you would do something under a certain circumstance. You can be clear in your mind of what you will do when a circumstance arises. But quite honestly, as sure as you are, we really don't know anything about you, me, or anybody else until that circumstance comes up and you are actually tested and it really, truly is all on the line. And so I hope that I would have gone into those towers. I hope that I would have been like this firefighter from Detroit and I would have jumped in that river. But it's always one of those things that you wonder about. You sit back and you see what somebody else did and you go, man, they paid the ultimate price to try and help other people, and you wonder if you would be capable of the same thing, and you hope you would be, right? You hope you would be. But definitely, I saw that story, and, this episode I do of the Off-Farm Income Podcast, obviously we're talking about rural crime, and that means we're talking about law enforcement, and that means we're talking about people who are serving the public, and they're willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice to help out their communities. And so I just couldn't ignore this story. This guy's a hero. There's a wonderful picture of him on the story, and I'll link up to it in the show notes if you want to check it out. But you can just Google Detroit firefighter rescuing girls from drowning. It'll come up. But what we should be doing, and we do this to ourselves as as citizens of the United States and citizens of the world. These are the people, like Sergeant Johnson here. These are the people that we should make shoes for, right? We should have. If he was a runner, we should have running shoes, Sergeant Johnson running shoes for heroes like this. We really should devote more of our time, more of our energy to honoring brave men and women just like this. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to take the chance, and I know you are happy with me for doing so. So I'm glad I could do that. Okay, let's jump into the tip of the week. Now, this is going to relate to a story I've got later in the episode. But let's talk about this for a second. A locking mailbox. This is one of my tips of the week. This is what we call target hardening. All right. Now, there are going to be varying levels of locking mailboxes. There can be no question that a locking mailbox is a harder target than a non-locking mailbox. But of course, there are going to be varying degrees of locking mailboxes. But for those of us who live in rural areas and there's not a lot of people around, and there's not a lot we can do in terms of protecting our incoming or outgoing mail out there on the roadside. A lot of the crime prevention techniques I've talked about, a lot of the signage and things like that, it's just not going to apply when somebody can just drive up, open a mailbox, and grab stuff out of it. Now, I said incoming and outgoing mail. Unless you have the ability to give your postal delivery person a key to a locking mailbox, you don't have any way to lock your outgoing mail. But if 50% of the problem is incoming mail, actually more than 50%, because you're probably receiving a lot more than you mail. So if you want to create a situation where you can do something about some of these more minor property crimes, man, a locking mailbox is a great idea. Now, I don't have one on my farm, so I'm hypocritical when it comes to this. I really should. In our last house, I did get a locking mailbox. And I did that in response. We were having a rash of mail thefts in Boise, Idaho back then when I did that. That was like 2000 and we moved in here 2011. That was like 2008 or something like that. So I did do that at the last house. I haven't done it here. I really, really should. I have not done that here. One thing I never do is I never mail anything from our mailbox. I take it into town when I can go into town, and I drop it in a secure mailbox. That's just one of my things. It's left over from being a police officer. But usually when I'm mailing something, there's a check involved or something like that, or there's personal information. And so I don't like sticking it in the mailbox and then putting that flag up. To me, if you're driving down the road and you are willing to steal from somebody, you see that flag up, well, there's something in there that's possibly of value. And of course, you don't care about the people you're going to steal it from. So if you get it out and it's not worth anything, you'll just throw it on the side of the road and you won't give it a second of thought. So I don't mail anything from our mailbox. I always take it into town if I'm making a trip into town, and I drop it at the post office or whatever that may be. But, if you're doing that, you live further out than me, and that's not practical. You probably are mailing things from your mailbox. And I mean, fortunately for you, you've got less traffic coming by your place if you live further out. But with that said, it's one of those things. If you can put a locking mailbox out there, and I certainly should do that myself, that's a big benefit to protect that mail that's coming into you, because identity that, man, I don't know why I can't talk today. Identity theft can certainly happen through people stealing your mail. You get these pre-approved credit card offers in your mailbox. People can grab those. People can grab envelopes where people have sent you a check, and they can wash that check and rewrite it to themselves or to cash. I mean, there's lots of things that can be done. So the more protection you can give yourself there, the better, especially since our mailboxes generally sit out on the roadside in an area where a lot of our crime prevention techniques and crime prevention through environmental design and things like that just cannot work. So that is my tip of the week. A locking mailbox, not very expensive, and it's one of those deterrents. It's one of those ways. Again, remember, we talk about rational choice offenders all the time when we're talking about crime prevention. It's one of those techniques that can raise the potential cost to the offender of committing the crime. And if you can raise the cost above the potential benefit, then you create a good chance that they'll just move on and they will not do anything at your place. So yeah, consider a locking mailbox. Okay, so let's jump in to our first article. There's I'm going back. This is, of course, our segment that I call Where the Second Amendment Does Not Exist. Man, it is interesting to follow this stuff. Again, it doesn't fit into this segment of the show to talk about what's going on in Africa, but just letting you know, in South Africa, nothing's changing. I keep seeing just tons of stories about murders of farmers down there. It is really unreal what is going on in South Africa. And certainly doesn't fit into this segment, but I feel derelict if I don't mention it. Okay, this article here comes out of a publication called Farming UK. Thieves steal 50 sheep from Dorset farm. Dorset police are appealing for information after thieves stole dozens of sheep from a field in, oh boy, here we go, Piddle Trentide. near Dorchester. Boy, I know I butchered that. The large-scale livestock theft happened between 1930 hours or 7:30 p.m. on Monday, the 17th of August, to the early morning of the following day. A spokesman for the Dorchester police said a nearby neighbor's dog was consistently barking around 0500 hours, 5 in the morning, and it is likely that the theft occurred around this time. If you have any information, give a call. It says here, it's important you report any suspicious circumstances, and this can be done by dialing 101, whatever that is, over in the United Kingdom. It says here, this incident follows the theft of 71 lambs in Devon earlier this month. Livestock were stolen from a farm in Bratton Clovelly area sometime between the 5th and the 12th of August. Now, I want to jump down to right here. It says, gangs are taking large numbers of sheep which are thought to enter the food chain illegally, and that's what's driving the increase. That's very, very interesting. Different than here, but very, very interesting to think that organized crime is coming out to the countryside to steal livestock. All right, so how can I better protect livestock? That's part of this article. And it says here, to deter livestock thieves, NFU Mutual advises farmers to padlock field gates, ensure stock is clearly marked and records are up to date, when possible, graze livestock in fields away from roads, ask neighbors to report any sightings of unusual vehicles loading sheep. Man, you'd hope if you live out in the country, people would do that. Join a farm watch. Okay, I want to park on one of these, and that is where it says, when possible, graze livestock in fields away from roads. Now, when I did my 2-part episode on crime prevention on farms, I touched on this a little bit. Now, of course, this is not going to be possible for all of us or for very many of us. But if you, let me just take the obvious situation here. If the way your farm is functioning is that you are growing crops and you are grazing livestock, you're doing both, and the quality of your soil, your rotations, it's all interchangeable, and you can do this on any part of the farm that you want, then yeah, this makes sense, right? Grow your row crops out by the road and keep your livestock as far away from the road as possible to deter this, or maybe to keep potential thieves from even seeing this. But I know that in my particular farm, this would not work because we're all livestock and we have some pasture that borders up against the roadway. And I think for most of us listening to this show, that is going to be true. But when I did the 2-part episode on crime prevention techniques on our farms, one of the things I talked about is if you have along a roadside some marginal land, and that's land that normally maybe you would not farm or maybe you would normally graze because it's marginal and you're not going to get much out of it. If you can just plant a tall cover crop in that area that'll block the view in, sometimes that can be really, really beneficial. But what I talked about when I did that episode was just cultivating it, planting something there to cultivate it, and it creates that kind of mental boundary for people that if they cross that, they know they're probably going to be called in. Like it says in here, to have your neighbors report suspicious vehicles. Well, you would think your neighbors would already do that. But if somebody is deep into, a 40-foot wide corn patch that you've planted or beans or something like that, the neighbor's probably almost assuredly going to call or stop and talk to them. Now, if it's the middle of the night, that changes things a bit. But, if you live in an area, say, where you can grow sorghum, maybe you just do a 10-foot wide barrier of sorghum, but that really tall sorghum that grows, that feed sorghum, and it can block the view of your livestock. The trade-off here is it also could block the view of your farm, so if somebody's in there doing bad things, passersby can't see it. So it violates one of the tenets of crime prevention through environmental design that we've talked about many times, which is natural surveillance. But maybe in certain circumstances, what they're suggesting is grazing your animals away from the road. If you can't do that, but you want to hide the fact that livestock is there, then maybe you can plant something there. So for a large part of the growing season, people driving by can't see livestock. That's just a thought I had as I read this. So anyway, one thought for you. But man, it's interesting how many sheep I'm reading about that are being stolen over in the United Kingdom. I find that very, very, Very interesting. Now, this next story, this goes to the land where the Second Amendment does not exist, over in the United Kingdom as well. But this could easily go under our heading of chalk one up for the good guys. This comes out of the publication Farmers Weekly, and I love this story. This story is really cool. Farmer turns detective to track down tractor GPS thief. Now, we've reported on this before, that a lot of GPS units and tractors are being stolen over in the United Kingdom, in Scotland, and Ireland over there. Well, it says here, a farmer turned detective and traced a rural thief believed to be responsible for the large-scale theft of high-value tractor global positioning system equipment. The entire fleet of John Deere Green Star cab displays and Starfire satellite receivers were taken in an overnight raid on July 15th at Preston's Agricultural Contractors in Desford, Leicestershire. No, I'm saying that wrong. The theft took place between midnight and 2 a.m., and a suspect, a man aged in his 30s, was captured on closed-circuit television stealing the items. The farmer alerted Leicestershire police, and officers arrived at the scene at about 9 a.m. the same morning. They could not find any lines of inquiry and issued a standard crime reference number. Okay, so let me translate. They could not find any suspect information or clues or evidence, and they issued a standard report number. Basically, they took a report and said, sorry this happened, here's your report. And it goes on to say, but devastated company owner Adam Preston and his team decided they would try to track down the suspect. And I'll tell you what, this was always one of my fears as a police officer. I would say there's nothing we could do and somebody else would prove me wrong. They'd do my job for me. So this is what kind of drove me every now and then. So it says here, after Mr. Preston had suffered the theft of GPS kit from his tractors on a previous occasion, he had installed tracking devices on some of the domes. The small devices were purchased from Amazon for about £200 and included an app which allows users to trace their whereabouts. Now, I don't know if he did not tell law enforcement about this or if law enforcement blew it off. That could happen. Following the theft, the tracker devices were signaling on the app that the stolen domes were situated about 40 miles away in the West Midlands. Mr. Preston and 3 others jumped in a car and traveled to a built-up area in Birmingham. The trackers were able to pinpoint a rough location where the domes were located. While the 4 men were parked up at the roadside, they suddenly spotted a man carrying a bag with what seemed to contain the familiar yellow domes. Now, it's important they say familiar. That's important later because when they ask, how did you know this guy had your stolen property? Well, it's because they all look like this, and what are the chances, right? The farmers got out of the car and pursued the man on foot. This is the part I love. They saw him walk over to another vehicle and open the boot. I'm going to think that's the trunk. And it says, which revealed an Aladdin's cave, that's in quotes, of stolen tractor domes and screens. As the farmers, I love this, we need pitchforks here. As the farmers ran towards the suspect, he panicked and fled, jumping across gardens and vaulting fences. However, thanks to their efforts, police were able to input the details of the abandoned small van on the National Automatic Number Plate Recognition System database. That would probably be the equivalent to what we have in the U.S., which we call NCIC, National Crime Identification. I can't remember anything from law enforcement anymore. I'm sorry about that, but it's NCIC. They found the vehicle's registration was recorded in the locality of tractor GPS kit thefts in the area covered by 7 police forces in England. This includes thefts in Cheshire, Lincolnshire, Staffordshire, Leicestershire, and Wiltshire. The suspect has since fled to Eastern Europe, and police forces are trying to trace him and bring him to justice. This is exactly what motivated me as a police officer. Mr. Preston said, quote, if the courts had got their backside into gear and issued the police a warrant for his arrest earlier, they may have been able to apprehend him before he managed to get out of the country. If he comes back here, they will pick him up. So I love the farmers chasing this guy down. I don't love the fact that it seems as though over in the United Kingdom They have law enforcement that's a little bit run-of-the-mill. We've seen enough thefts that we're not going to do everything we can to catch this one. I mean, I've been reading about this for a while. This is a significant crime over in the United Kingdom. You would think that law enforcement would want to take every possible clue they could, every possible lead they could to shut this down, and it sounds like these farmers shut down something significant here. So good for them. And hopefully they get this guy actually into custody and back and extradited to the United Kingdom very soon so he can be held accountable. All right, now our next one from outside of the U.S. comes from, this is coming from Canada, I believe, and the publication here, Medicine Hat News, sorry, took me a second, from August 22nd, 2020. It says, Drug Treatment Court coming to Medicine Hat. Now, I wanted to read this one for a particular reason. It says here, a drug treatment court will open in Medicine Hat later this year to address those who repeatedly appear in court and would like an opportunity to break that cycle. I'm going to jump down. It says, someone struggling with an addiction who wants an opportunity to recover and get treatment will have a chance to do so in a program that lasts 12 to 18 months. Okay, so the reason I brought this up, and when I saw this, I thought this is a really good opportunity to talk about this. So when you think about the people who are going out into the rural countryside and they are stealing whatever they can get their hands on, you know, here in the United States, copper wire, irrigation equipment, anything that has an internal combustion engine, chemicals, crops, anything, almost always, somewhere down the line on this, whether it's that person or on some other end of this, there's going to be drug use. Almost always. And almost always, well, let me say this. A large portion of the time, the person that's out committing these crimes is doing so to feed a drug habit. Frequently, it's going to be methamphetamine. It could be other stuff as well, but frequently, because we see a lot of methamphetamine use, unfortunately, in our rural communities, frequently it's going to be methamphetamine, and a lot of the time, and I know this from personal experience as just a person with friends of mine, and also as a police officer, and also as a sheriff's deputy, a lot of the time there is going to be a good family. There's going to be good people on the other side of that offender who are praying and hoping and worrying and hoping for the day that this person can give up this habit, that they can somehow break this addiction or at least control this addiction so they're not out doing bad things to people in their community any longer, and they're not putting themselves in jeopardy, and they're not risking their own lives either from the drug use, from associating with people who are selling and using these drugs, or from going out and committing crimes. There are people out there, and if you've never been in this situation with a relative or with somebody you know, try and put yourself in the shoes of these families for a moment. There are people out there who know the better side of somebody who has gotten addicted to methamphetamine or something like that. And they worry about these people every day, every night. They don't wonder what they're doing, and they're ashamed and they're embarrassed that somebody they love, somebody they care about, is out and they're behaving like this and doing this to other people. And so while all of us have a visceral reaction when somebody comes onto our place and they steal or they do something slimy, and we want them caught and we want them held accountable, it's one of these things I would love it if we could remember that deep down inside of this person, most of these people, is probably somebody who is worth salvaging. And there's definitely going to be good people on the other side who are very, very worried about this individual. And they want them to get caught too, because they want them to finally hit rock bottom. And they want them to finally hit rock bottom so they have the best chance of recovering before they actually end their life through this addiction. And by the way, there was a study I used to quote teaching criminal justice that actually came out of San Francisco, the Haight-Ashbury district, which showed that an arrest can simulate the feeling of hitting rock bottom, meaning a drug-addicted person, they may have another 6 months or a year to go before they can get to that feeling of, this euphemism of hitting rock bottom. But getting arrested can actually accelerate that, which is good because this euphemism, this concept of rock bottom, is what can motivate a person to finally actually do something about an addiction. And I've seen people addicted to meth. It is such a scary drug. It is absolutely such a scary drug that you feel for the person because it takes over control of them. Now, you still hold them accountable. Don't take this the wrong way. You still hold them accountable, but man, if they've got a chance of salvaging their life and getting off of this, you want them to. You want, just for them. You want to see them get off of this. And rock bottom, if they can have that feeling of rock bottom, it gives them the best chance of developing enough motivation to sustain them through that first part of recovering from addiction so that they can get off of this horribly addicting drug. And this is true for other drugs as well, but I'm just using meth here because meth is so prevalent in our rural communities. So, coming back to this article about drug treatment court, and this popped up because Medicine Hat's a more rural community. Drug court is what we call it in the United States. Drug court is the most effective thing that I have ever seen in my entire career of truly helping people who are addicted. It's the best thing I've seen. Now, that doesn't mean it's got a 90% efficacy. It doesn't even mean it's got a 50% efficacy. But when you're comparing numbers of other programs, drug court is by far the best I have ever seen at helping people. Helping people break this cycle, be held accountable, be around peers who... drug court's amazing in that it allows other addicted peers to hold the addicted person accountable. It's not just the judge sitting on high. Matter of fact, drug court's almost reversed, and it's really interesting in the way it works, at least the way I've seen it work, where the judge is there encouraging the offender, holding them accountable, yes, and sometimes putting them back in custody, yes, but being there and being a cheerleader for the offender. So the state, so the person on high, the judge, they're the one who's sitting there in almost this parental role, encouraging the juvenile or the adult offender that you can do it, you can do better. But they're making their appearances in drug court, these regular weekly appearances in front of a bunch of other drug-addicted people who are clean. And when the offender who is relapsing gets up in front of the judge and says, well, I missed drug court last week because of this, or I didn't take my UA, my urinalysis, because of this, or I used again because of this, and it's all a bunch of BS because that's what drug-addicted people do, it's not the judge that is castigating the individual. It's the individual's peers who've all told the same lies, and they've all made the same excuses while they were proliferating their addiction, who are in the courtroom, who will hold this person accountable. It's a really, really powerful thing. And it's the best thing I've ever seen work. And I'm not trying to sit here and say it's foolproof. I mean, drug addiction is unbelievably difficult to deal with, and nothing is foolproof. But I wanted to bring that article up because, man, if you in your community, let's say there's an initiative on the ballot, or there's some sort of a levy or a bond or something like that to fund a drug court, I want to tell you from a practitioner who has been there in person and watched it and been privy, because I was part of law enforcement and I was part of the confidentiality, been privy to go in and observe drug court, which is so often not open to the public, but I was able to go in and watch it. Juvenile drug court, as a matter of fact, and it was very, very powerful. And man, it really is something to see somebody who has got the rest of their life ahead of them glimmer with hope that they can break this addiction. So I wanted to bring that one up, and I hope that works very, very well up there in Medicine Hat, and I hope it works well where you are at as well. Okay, our last story about where the Second Amendment does not exist, we're going to France. First time I've done this. This story I'm just putting in here because this is bizarre. Now, we had something like this going on over in Oregon recently, just one state over from me. But this one's very interesting. This comes out of a publication called The Express. Now, honestly, I don't know where this publication's from, because it's written in English, so it might be from the United Kingdom, but the story at least is about France. Boy, you'd think as a seasoned podcast professional with 876 charted episodes under his belt, he could speak better. But anyway, here we go. The title of this one, Urgent Police Hunt After 15 Horses Found Mutilated and Tortured. French police are investigating a spate of gruesome killings after 15 horses were found mutilated and tortured in rural parts of the country. Police are hunting the criminals responsible for mutilating live horses and stealing their body parts and organs. At least 15 attacks have been reported in the country since the start of the year, with the most recent incident occurring on Monday. It is not yet known why the perpetrators are targeting the animals, though suggestions have been made that the attacks are part of a sadistic ritual or online challenge. That's scary, an online challenge. The majority of the horrific attacks have taken place in the French countryside near, I think it's pronounced Lyon. It's spelled Lyon, like lion. So I may be saying that wrong. On Monday, a horse which had previously died of natural causes was found with its nose, ear, and one eye removed in the Jura region. Police have opened an investigation for theft and concealment of animal organs in an attempt to identify the perpetrators. The investigation is being supported by the Central Office for the Fight Against Environmental and Public Health Attacks. That's a mouthful. The attack is not an isolated incident, however, and has been linked to 15 other similar cases. A similar case was recently reported in Courtambert, probably not saying that right, a village in the central eastern department of Saône-et-Loire. Wow, my French. I have no French. The incident involved a horse which had its right ear cut off, one of its eyes gouged out, and its genitals cut away. A third horse in the same region was stunned before having its eye gouged out and a piece of bone removed on Friday. The animal later died. They did that while this horse was alive. Officials said an investigation had been launched into serious abuse or acts of cruelty against a tamed or captive domestic animal. Almost a dozen over cases have been reported this year. Okay. It says all here, ponies and donkeys have also been targeted. Okay, so anyway, that's probably enough of this horrible article. Man, 2020, we're still talking about Satanism. Can you believe that? I guess it depends on where you stand on your belief on what's written in the Bible. I can believe it. Man, it blows my mind, though. I can't hardly believe that. All right. Well, everybody, that's all I've got out of areas where the Second Amendment does not exist for this week. But I'll tell you what I got for you right now, and that is an acknowledgement of our great sponsors of this show. Hey, 2 items you never want to get stolen off of your farm. The first one is your lacrosse boots. You do not want your lacrosse boots to get stolen because you are going to be dependent on these wonderful boots. The Alpha Range boots from Lacrosse Footwear are built to work as hard as you. Ideal for chores around the house and farm. They are waterproof, comfortable, and available for both men and women. You can find them over at lacrossefootwear.com, anywhere you buy your farm and ranch clothing. And let me tell you, I love my Alpha Range boots. Wear them every single day, and we want you to do the same as well. And then, of course, your Powder River livestock handling equipment. You don't want that stuff stolen either. Luckily, stealing a Powder River squeeze chute is not an easy task because they are stout. Same with your Powder River livestock panels. But hey, I've got them right here on my farm. We want you to have them on your farm as well. Let your local farm and ranch retailer know that you want to see that Powder River green out in their sales yard, so you can have the finest in livestock handling equipment, and you can find everything they've got to offer you over at powderriver.com. All right, well, let's jump into rural crime in the United States. Now, I'm going to kick it off with a story that was sent to me by a listener. I want to say special thanks to Brandon Pacheco from Hanford, California, down there in Kings County. What is the matter with me today? In Kings County. I really do appreciate him sending this to me. And hey, it has been, like I said, it has been really awesome, the feedback I've been getting. And this is the first story that has been sent to me. And thank you very much, Brandon. Thank you for doing that. And I really do appreciate that. And any of you who've got local crime stories going on, rural crime stories in your area, feel free to send them over to me. And if I can get them on, I absolutely will. So this is on Facebook. So on Facebook, the Kings County Sheriff's Office, they've got a page, and this is under the heading of the Kings County Rural Crimes Task Force. It says here, the Kings County Rural Crimes Task Force would like the assistance in identifying these 2 women recently, the two women have been stealing table grapes from various vineyards in Kings County. Anyone with information, please contact Sergeant Rod Schulman at 559-852-4842 or the anonymous tip line at 559-852-2111. I'm not going to repeat those for you, but you can hit that little button that lets you rewind 15 seconds and hear me repeat those anytime you want. So it's very interesting. Here on Facebook, there's 4 photographs of 2 women skulking about in a vineyard in the middle of the night, stealing table grapes. Now, for those of you, when I say table grapes, you don't know what I mean. They're not wine grapes. They're not grapes that are going to be dehydrated for raisins. These are grapes that you're going to buy in the store or namely in a farmer's market, which I'll circle back around to, and you're just going to eat them. The really delicious, fresh table grapes. My grandfather used to grow Thompson seedless table grapes down there, one county north of Kings County and Fresno County, out there in Sanger on Highland Avenue. Anyway, so these 2 ladies, there's pictures of them. They've got headlamps on. Now, there's one interesting thing. This picture was taken by a security camera that's out there in the field, and it looks like there's a flash on, but I think it's obviously infrared because the license plate and the reflectors of the pickup they're driving both look like there's a light being shined on them, so I think it's got to be infrared. I don't know if this is a game trail camera, like a trail cam, or if this was a surveillance system, but there are no pictures here of these women where it appears they've noticed the camera at all. And that's why I say these trail cams are really cool with what they can do with infrared, or with security cameras with what they can do with infrared. But obviously, I would think if this was a trail cam, we would have never seen these pictures because these ladies would have probably walked right over and grabbed it if they noticed the trail cam. So this is a really, really good sign that you can put something out like that and people might not even notice it because of the infrared. Now, another thing that's interesting about this story is these ladies appear to be driving a very, very new GMC pickup with a topper. It appears to be a dark-colored GMC pickup. It's got a topper on it. It appears to be dark-colored. I'm zooming in. I think it's a Sierra. It looks like a Sierra, but I can't quite make it out. Maybe in another picture I could. So I'm just kind of scrolling through these. I think it's a Sierra. It's got a stinger on the back. It's got a ball in the stinger. The stinger, why even guess? It looks like it's probably a 2-inch stinger or a 2-inch ball, but that's not important. But it does have a stinger out the back with a ball in it. And I say the truck looks new because it looks new, but looking at the wheels and tires, the tires look like something that would come stock on a new GMC pickup. That's what they look like to me. They look like a road tire, not something you would put on a 4x4. So that looks interesting to me. One of the ladies, it's at an angle, so it's hard to tell how tall she really is, but she's got collar-length hair. She's a white female. She's heavy. She looks to be probably 200 pounds, something like that. And based on comparison to the pickup, she's probably 5'7", 5'6". She's wearing a white baseball cap, and she's got a headlamp on. And it appears that she is got keys hanging out of her right front pants pocket, and something stuffed in her back pocket. But it looks like maybe the way she carries her keys is some sort of keychain hangs out of her right front pocket. Got black shoes on, tan pants, a light-colored T-shirt, white ball cap, and the headlamp. And it appears she is smoking a cigarette and holds it in her right hand. That's what it looks like to me here. And the shirt's got some sort of a emblem on the front of the T-shirt. I don't know what that is. I'm spending some time on this because this is really good information. And the other lady, she's got a short sleeve white T-shirt on. She's got, looks like blonde hair up in a bun. She doesn't have a hat. She's got earrings on that are hanging below her ear, and she's got a headlamp and dark pants, and that's the only picture of her. Now, what's interesting about this crime is why would these ladies be going out in the middle of the night? This is not a junker pickup. Now, that doesn't mean they're not desperate for money. Who knows? Maybe they got a huge truck payment on this thing, and who knows? But what's interesting about this is if I was looking for these folks, I would be looking. I mean, I doubt they're stealing these grapes to eat them all. So they got to be selling them in a farmer's market, a flea market, something like that. And that's exactly where I would start looking. And with these pictures, I would think you would be able to locate them. Now, worst case scenario here, community-wise, is that they're stealing them and there's somebody that knows what's going on and they're selling them at the farmer's market. So you're not going to find these two ladies there. But my guess would be that these grapes are getting sold at some sort of a farmer's market or a roadside stand, something like that. So, man, take a look. I'll tell you what I'll do. In the show notes for today's episode, I will take screenshots of these ladies' photographs, and so you can see them as well. And take a look at them if you're down there in Kings County, or if you're in Fresno County, if you're in Kern County, anywhere bordering over there. Take a look at these pictures, and if you happen to be out at a farmer's market or something like that, and you happen to see these ladies, one of these ladies, hey, just call it in and reference these pictures and reference what you've heard here, and they're not going to arrest anybody if they don't have probable cause. So let's see what we can do to help out the farmers who are having their stuff stole. And that's just BS right there. So I'll put up 3 photos in the show notes today. And again, Brandon Pacheco, thank you very much for contributing that. I really do appreciate it. Any of you guys, you come up with a story like this locally, send it to me. And if I can cover it, I absolutely will. I'd be happy to do that. So let's see if we can get those folks caught and move this story over to the chalk one up for the good guys segment as well. Okay, now we're going to the High Plains Journal. It says here, reward offered in Winnsboro cattle theft case. Tips may be provided anonymously. A $1,000 reward has been offered in a case of missing cattle, according to Texas and Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association Special Ranger Larry Hand. During the late evening hours of July 30th, 4 head of cattle marked with yellow back tags were stolen from Winnsboro Livestock and Dairy Auction. The animals were consigned to be sold the next day. During the same time frame, additional cattle were stolen from another cattle company at the same location. Hand, along with Texas and Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association Special Ranger Bo Fox, have been investigating the case and now are calling on the public to help. Hand says, if you know something, please come forward. All tips are kept confidential, and tips may be provided anonymously by calling our Operation Cow Thief line. The reward will be paid to an individual who provides information leading to the arrest or indictment of the person or persons responsible for the crime. And the Operation Cow Thief phone number is 888-830-2333, or anyone with information may alternately contact Hand at 903-571-3488 or Fox at 903-348-9638. So, let's help these cattle be recovered and these thieves be caught. Man, sheep rustling, cattle rustling. Desperate times, I guess. All right, now our next article has to do with animal rights activists. And make no mistake, just because they're committing crimes on purpose with full knowledge that they're committing crimes does not mean that what some of these animal rights activists do are not rural crimes. There's a long list of rural crimes committed by animal rights activists over the years. No question about it. Animal Liberation Front, Earth Liberation Front. They've done all sorts of domestic terrorism, all sorts of animal theft. Heck, down where I grew up in Valley Home, California, and the sheriff's office I used to work for, Stanislaus County, they had to come out and guard a dairy, I don't know, about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, because animal rights activists were showing up and they were stealing calves out of calf pens. So this is important, and there's some good people doing some work here that I want to mention as well. So this comes out of the publication. This is Farm Journal, but it's Farm Journal's Pork. So it's their pork publication. And the title here is Things Animal Rights Activists Say, 2020 edition. So this is something that gets repeated over and over. This is written by Hannah Thompson Weeman. I believe I met Hannah at the National Association of Farm Broadcasters meeting. It might have been somebody else. But the reason I believe that is because it looks like here that Hannah works for the Animal Agriculture Alliance. Now, all of you, if you're looking to do something to advocate for agriculture, especially animal agriculture, and you're looking for a place to put some extra dollars to help out, check out the Animal Agriculture Alliance. Now, when I hear that title, to me it almost sounds like they're an animal rights group, but they're not. They are an organization that supports those of us who want to raise livestock as the way we conduct agriculture in the United States. And they do a lot to protect and to help us and to spread the actual accurate message of animal agriculture in the United States. So check them out. It's a great place. If you got an extra $50, if you got an extra $50,000 you're looking to donate, and you support the livestock industry, this is a great place to do that. But check them out first. Don't just take my word for it. But anyway, I had a long talk with, I think it's Hannah, at the NAFB conference about what they do. And, man, they do, in my opinion, good work based on what I know. So here's what she says. Every summer, the Animal Agriculture Alliance sends representatives to major animal rights conferences. We believe it's important to have eyes and ears in the room as activists discuss what strategies and tactics they intend to employ as they work toward their goal of ending animal agriculture. While we share the full conference reports with our members, I usually take the opportunity to share some of the most outlandish and concerning statements made in this blog to help spread the word about the threat of animal rights activism and why everyone in animal agriculture needs to remain vigilant. Now, I'm covering this right now. I support these people's right to their opinion. I support their right to freedom of speech, to be able to publish, I want to say whatever they want. And I would like to think whatever they want within the bounds of facts and honesty, which we know get twisted or get fabricated. We know that. But I support their First Amendment rights, no question. But they don't get anywhere, or at least in their opinion, they don't get far enough with their First Amendment rights, and that's where these rural crimes come in, and that's why I want to cover this. Okay, so going on with this article. Like all events, the activist conferences have looked quite different this summer. Extreme activist group Direct Action Everywhere moved its Animal Liberation Conference, which typically includes a large-scale protest and mass open rescue, meaning theft. So, of course, in their way of looking at things, stealing your livestock is a rescue. It's not a theft. However, and I can say this with full confidence, that livestock are property. Now, we can have, animal rights people and animal agriculture people can debate this all day long, and maybe someday they'll have the votes to make us all give up raising livestock because they're going to say no. Livestock are no longer property. But right now they are property, and I don't know where you derive your authority for raising livestock. I derive mine in particular from the Bible, where it says that we are basically stewards of all the creatures and the beasts of the earth. Now, stewardship means we raise them responsibly, ethically, and we take care of them, but we understand that what their purpose is. And that's where the big difference is here, obviously, between these animal rights groups. So they think coming onto your property and committing crimes and stealing your property, which you are stewarded with taking care of, is simply a rescue. But it's not in the eyes of the law. It is a crime, and it's a rural crime. So that's why we want to cover this. Okay, so going on with this. I'm going to start back up on that last sentence, which typically includes large-scale protest and mass open rescue, meaning theft of livestock or poultry, virtual and rebranded it as the Animal Liberation Online Assembly. So that's the new name of this conference, which started in April and continues with sessions held sporadically. The Animal Rights National Conference was moved to virtual and ultimately canceled, with activist group Animal Place stepping up to host a farmed animal conference e-summit in its place. Humane Society of the United States has also moved its Taking Action for Animals online, and moved it to this fall. While the venue and delivery might be different, the content is the same as speakers at these conferences have continued to focus on ways activists can achieve their aim to have a vegan world. Without further ado, I present the latest round of statements illustrating just what we are all up against and why it is critical to take animal activism, I'm putting in animal, to take activism seriously. So here's the first quote that Hannah's putting in this article. Quote, "We are going to have to get on every platform that's out there, spread the word, bring more people to our movement. We are going to have trivia challenges, get hashtags trending on Twitter, and we are going to build coalitions with other social justice groups, and we are going to attend virtual meetings to get inspired." And that quote's by Elmira Tanner from DXE. Now that's interesting. When I studied domestic terrorism in the 90s and then the early 2000s, back then it was mostly animal and environmental rights groups that were committing these acts. Animal Liberation Front, which is ALF, ALF, and Earth Liberation Front, which is ELF, ELF, hard to distinguish those two, both based in Corvallis, Oregon, which tells you where a lot of the stuff we're seeing in Portland's coming from. They were big proponents of this. And what they did back then is they put up quote-unquote stories on their websites that people could read. And somebody would write a story of how they went and they vandalized a McDonald's, or how they went and they lit cars on fire at a car lot, SUVs on fire, or something like that. They would put these quote-unquote stories. And, of course, the people publishing this website, they weren't giving direct orders to people to go out and commit these criminal acts. And they weren't encouraging it either. They were just printing stories. They were being journalistic. But each one of these stories were written in such detail that they were line-by-line instructions on how you could go commit these crimes and you could get away with them. And so that was kind of the loophole they exploited. I don't know that it's any different today. So as this person, Elmira Tanner, is talking about going to social justice places, obviously they're trying to get people to start following them, ultimately to come back to their social media pages, their websites, and probably read their quote-unquote stories. Okay, so next quote. Quote, "Let's stop raping these animals into existence. None of the animals on these factory farms are making love." End quote. Whoa. This comes from Jane Velez Mitchell in the Jane Unchained News Network. Need I say more? Probably not. Okay, next quote. Quote, "So many children are devastated by the whole 4-H and FFA program that is clearly meant to desensitize them to farmed animals." End quote. This is from Kim Sturla, Animal Place, who also stated, quote, "I hope we are seeing the nail in the coffin for these institutions." End quote. Boy. I look at public education, and the one place I look and I see it working is FFA. And these people want it to end because of animal agriculture. Wow. Okay, next quote. "I used to believe, I don't anymore, that farmed animal welfare acts protect animals, but they don't. They just protect the money-making corporations and the really nasty people that work in the industry." End quote. That comes from Mark Beckoff, University of Colorado at Boulder. So public funds, taxpayer dollars going to pay this gentleman to call all of you really nasty people. Now, if I remember right, I think Colorado State is the land-grant university in Colorado. And, of course, we've got that type of stuff all through our university systems. All right, the next quote. "A movement like ours is the beginning of the end of animal agriculture." End quote. From Miyoko Shinner and Miyoko's Vegan Creamery. The next quote. "When animal liberation has finally been achieved, we are going to look back, and one of the unsung heroes of what created this new kind, compassionate world is going to be the share button of Facebook." end quote. This comes from John Oberg, vegan social media influencer, on why, quote, the biggest impact you can have as an animal rights activist is through social media. Next quote, final quote. You're not going to change society necessarily by holding an event once a year, end quote. That comes from Anita, I think it's Crank, from the Save Movement, on the need for frequent direct actions, protest vigils, and disruptions. So if there's any question in your mind that these people are motivated, let that question be gone. These folks are motivated. They do commit crimes in rural areas. I've seen multiple stories about arsons, vandalisms, and of course, theft of livestock. So be prepared, folks. Be prepared. We've got a dairy out here near Cuna. I'm not going to say where it's at, but they have done a wonderful job, at least on the road front, of putting up walls you cannot see into their dairy. Now, I don't suspect they're doing anything unethical. I just suspect they were very, very proactive about this stuff, and I'm sure that's why the fence is up. And I applaud them. I know that's not practical for everybody, everywhere you're at, but yeah, if you can do it, it's great. And man, these animal thefts, I don't know what these folks are thinking. So there's so much livestock out there. So you go steal them, but then what do you do with them? Are they going to be in better conditions? I mean, they got to go somewhere. They've got to get fed. I don't know what you do with them. I don't know where the mindset is. Okay, jump into our final segment. Chalk one up for the good guys. This comes out of, looks like a CBS affiliate, KIMA. And I'm sorry, these a lot of these articles when they pop up are not immediately obvious where they're at. But this is out of Portland, Oregon, so it's probably out of Portland. And the title of this article is, A Man Gets 4 Years in Jail for Stealing Stimulus Checks, Mail from Dozens. So that's why my tip of the week was locking mailboxes. All right. Nicholas William Berry pleaded guilty to aggravated identity theft and was sentenced to 4 years in prison in a large mail and theft case in Washington County. Police say Berry was found to have in his possession stolen mail, which included stimulus checks, ID cards, payroll checks, and debit cards. Quote, "This is one of the most prolific cases of identity theft I have prosecuted throughout my career," end quote, said Deputy District Attorney Wise. "Our community is struggling enough with the pandemic, and people should not have to deal with the theft of vital unemployment or stimulus benefits." It says here, a witness observed Berry stealing a package from a home in Beaverton, so that's Oregon, by Portland, and saw stolen mail fall out of his backpack on May 26th and reported the activity to local law enforcement. Good for that citizen. After authorities tracked him down, they say they found stolen mail belonging to more than 24 people. Investigators also said they were later able to determine that Berry cashed some of the checks in his possession. So, folks, that locking mailbox, and yes, I'm on the list too. I need to upgrade, and I need to do the same thing, especially, well, I'm not going to give you too much information about all the vulnerabilities in my place, but definitely get that locking mailbox. You know, that stimulus check, whether or not you needed it, that's your money. I mean, it's coming out of the taxes, and that thing shows up. You want to get that thing, and who knows? I cashed mine. I got mine delivered electronically, but you know what? I cashed mine. And the reason is right at the moment, I wasn't in desperate need of it, but it was my tax dollars. It's your tax dollars. And I didn't know where this COVID thing is going. I still don't know where this COVID thing is going. And so I'm not going to take for granted that type of thing because we are in uncertain times. So protect your mail, everybody. That is exactly why that was the tip of the week this week. Okay, last article. This one is something. This is coming out of Texas. This is KENS 5, another CBS affiliate. It says a man accused of stealing a truck, tractor, and rifle arrested in Atascosa. Oh, I'm sorry, everybody in Texas. I know I'm butchering that. Atascosa? Atascosa? I'm going to stop. I'm sorry. Atascosa, County. Several agencies assisted in the arrest of Robert Escamilla Jr., 26, who was taken into custody Tuesday afternoon. There's a mugshot of this gentleman here. Major neck tattoos. A couple teardrops off of his right eye. He's got some decorative eyelashes there. He's got a tattoo right below his lower lip. So he doesn't look to me like he conforms to social norms too much. A little antisocial individual here. Out of San Antonio. A crime spree came to an end Tuesday afternoon when several agencies assisted in the arrest of 26-year-old Robert Escamilla Jr. According to Sheriff Soward with the I'm sorry, everybody, especially my Texas folks, Atascosa County Sheriff's Office, the incident began Monday night when deputies responded to a burglary in the 400 block of Rutledge Road. Witnesses gave deputies the name of the suspect who took off before the deputies arrived. According to... Oh, that's interesting. Witnesses gave deputies the name so they knew him. Interesting. Okay, according to Sheriff Soward, the following morning, officers with the Poteet Police Department attempted to stop a 2019 white Dodge Ram pickup, which was later determined to be stolen from Pleasanton. Officers who were pursuing the truck lost sight of it, but the vehicle was later spotted by deputies on Farm to Market Road. It just says FM, but I know some Texas stuff. Farm to Market Road, 1470. Deputy Sheriff J.D. Ruiz pursued the truck to Price Road, where it ran into a fence, and the driver, later determined to be Escamilla, took off on foot. Sheriff Soward stated that deputies chased after Escamilla, who they recognized as the burglary suspect from the evening before, but he was able to escape. Later Tuesday morning, a rancher north of Poteet reported that he'd seen his neighbor's John Deere tractor on his property. The neighbor told police that when he approached the tractor, a man got out and pointed a semi-automatic rifle at him. The man with the rifle was later determined to be Escamilla, per Sheriff Soward. That is spooky stuff right there. Hey, a rifle against a pistol? Pistol loses, everybody. So even if you're armed with a handgun, some guy jumps out with a rifle, why don't you just get in that pickup and get the heck out of there? That is not good odds at all. I'm not trying to be lighthearted about that. That is scary stuff right there. Okay. The tractor was determined to be stolen from the neighbor's property. Atascosa County Sheriff's deputies, county constables, and Department of Public Safety officers from Atascosa County and Bexar County. I can say Bear correctly, even though it's spelled Bexar, everybody. I can say Bexar County. And Bexar County responded to the scene. Additionally, aircraft assistance was also requested from the Department of Public Safety agency in San Antonio. Yeah, this is a big one right here with this guy with this rifle. Big time. Despite trying to escape on foot and hiding in a hay barn, Sheriff Soward said that law enforcement officers were able to contain Escamilla and ultimately talk him into surrendering. Sheriff Soward said that while Escamilla denied having a rifle, several officers searched the surrounding property and found the rifle hidden in a tree. That's a creative hiding place. A lot of times we don't look up, whether we're looking for people and definitely when we're looking for evidence. That's interesting. The rifle was later determined to have been stolen out of a pickup from a nearby farm. Escamilla has been charged with the following: evading arrest with a motor vehicle, burglary of a habitation. We covered habitation a while back. Theft of over $30,000, theft of a firearm, burglary of a vehicle, criminal mischief to offense, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. He was also booked on 2 warrants from Poteet Police for evading arrest and deadly conduct, which I'm sure is the reckless driving that went along with the evading of the arrest. Pleasanton Police will be filing charges regarding the theft of the 2019 Ram truck. So, that is great. Good on everybody. I'm glad nobody was hurt, including Mr. Escamilla. Now, I will tell you that his antisocial behavior has gone far enough that he's got the teardrop tattoos by his eye. That's supposed to represent him inflicting death. I've met a lot of people with teardrop tattoos. I don't know if that's always true, but that is what that's supposed to indicate. And I'm happy that the farmer who was approaching the tractor was not shot. And for Mr. Escamilla, if he can ever be salvaged, If he had pulled the trigger on that rifle, he probably could not have been. So I'm glad he didn't do that. He should not be bonding out on this one, and he should be doing some time in prison to give him the chance to think about the error of his ways. And let's all pray for this gentleman that he does realize the error of his ways and he can reform, because this is no life. This is no life at all. All right, everybody. Well, hey, good work to everybody down there in Texas, including the community that got involved. And I will tell you, some of these crime sprees, I don't know if Mr. Escamilla was using meth or not. I was involved in a crime spree. I'm going so long in this episode, I don't have time to tell you about it. I'm sure one of these days I will. But as a police officer in Boise, I was involved in a crime spree that began in Modesto, my old hometown where I went to high school, and was the county seat of the county where I was a sheriff's deputy. And that crime spree started in Modesto. It wound up with a dead person in northern Nevada, a dead innocent person in northern Nevada, multiple stolen vehicles, and a bad guy with a parole violation in Boise, Idaho, with a mild case of frostbite when anybody else would have probably been dead. It's phenomenal how these crime sprees can just unfold, all under the haze and the stimulation of methamphetamine. So, again, if there is a bond levy in your area for a drug court, think real seriously about supporting that thing, because it's good for getting rid of crime, these horrible and what can be deadly, very violent crime sprees. And remember, there's good people out there praying for this person that they can finally get their life in order. Everybody, as always, enjoy your journey to the ultimate lifestyle business, agriculture.